we're in the age of data, we're in the age of big data. It's interesting, I think, how the acknowledgement of data now even permeates into pop culture and the lexicon. People understand that they're being tracked. People understand that data now is being gathered about them. And it's up to us to mine that and make it more meaningful to marketers without being intrusive to clients. And that's a lot of what we're trying to do at iQuanti. And there's some really interesting things in the market emerging around that.
Welcome. This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Andy North. I'm here today with Brent Trimble, SVP of Strategy and Solutions at iQuanti. Brent, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about iQuanti and about your background and where you are now and what some of the exciting things going on.
Great. I'll start with iQuanti. We're an independent digital marketing firm, founded in 2008, right in the coming out of the teeth of the Great Recession, with really a fundamental grounding principle. Could marketers use data in a more meaningful way to drive business results? Our focus is primarily in the performance channels such as display advertising, attribution, search engine marketing, and any client that has a need to acquire, convert, retain a customer, and make the most out of his digital marketing spend is typically a good fit for us. We've also developed some really interesting proprietary technology. Patents have been received that really help marketers look forward to predict the efficacy of their digital marketing tactics. One of these tools is called ALPS. It helps clients with a strong search engine marketing practice or even a nascent search engine marketing practice test, model, and see their efforts come to fruition in the performance of that platform with Google, Bing, and Gemini. So that's iQuanti. Myself, I'm very fortunate. In around 1999, 2000, I sort of fell into this thing called the internet. I went to several, at the time, introductory sort of meetup groups, and the era of dial-up modem, taught myself how to code. I said, this thing looks like it has legs, and was with more of a generalist advertising firm that fortunately had a growing, burgeoning sort of digital marketing department. And from there, I've been able to have a really diverse and I feel like very rich career, traveling the world and doing everything from starting up practices with independent agencies, helping run offices and practices on the holding company side, and have had some great experiences helping build valuation of companies, one of which culminated in the sale to Accenture Digital, and traveled with them for quite some time. But always in the realm of digital, sometimes on the technology side and the services side and the strategy side. So it's been an exciting run.
You recently wrote a column in Campaign about the importance of data, that it should be the foundation of any key marketing campaign or program. And yet you also mentioned that today's data is more about quick hit analytics. How do you corroborate the two? How do you get the two to work together, or are we sacrificing data for some of quick hit analytics, as you mentioned?
The context of that was really around, and there's plenty of ink being spilled around this existential moment that digital agencies or services firms are having right now. And the pendulum swings back and forth between specificity and being very general. But early in the days of advertising, even in the what in pop culture we think of as the Mad Men era, data was really had primacy. There were very well established planning departments that used data, very empirically sourced data, studying consumers in panels, testing product. Of course, the early ratings with a set box by Nielsen on a TV set to really study the impact, and indelible brands were formed in that period. Procter & Gamble and Unilever and things we grew up with. Tide detergent, Kool-Aid. Much of that was grounded in data. Over time, the agency model, and this was kind of the point of the article, the agency model shifted away from that, and the agencies really gave away that high ground of planning and strategy and focused very much on transactional. We're going to make things. We're going to make print ads. We're going to make billboards. We're going to make TV spots. All still very valuable and relevant today, but got away from that sort of grounding principle of using data. As you know, as the internet sort of burst onto the scene and things have been really disrupted, it's very easy for a firm to maybe adopt kind of what we call more shallow metrics that are important but don't always tell the full story, and things like clicks and views and impressions and so forth. And that's really the industry struggling to reconcile, I think, the emergence of digital with more old school data.
That's fascinating. What are your thoughts on some of the privacy legislation that's pending in the U.S., much like in Europe with GDPR?
There's always folks who are going to be hypersensitive about privacy, as they should be, as we all should be, and conscious. But if data is used in a responsible way, there can be a really safe, trustworthy transaction between a brand and an individual, as long as the use of that data and that transaction has some value to the consumer. With online retailing being so prevalent, and then everything we do now being transacted digitally, most consumers now make sort of that maybe subconscious acknowledgement that someone's using data to perhaps make my experience better. Going onto a favorite website or your airline booking of choice, and hey, welcome back, we recognize you, that type of thing.
It would seem there's a fine line between personalization and perhaps Big Brother.
Absolutely. Where there's some interesting technology coming out is making that transaction between the brand and the consumer and this intermediary a bit more trustworthy. And you see some beginnings of that with things like addressable TV, or even subscription-based TV with the Hulus and the Netflixes of the world, where we're subscribing and we know there's maybe a message that's going to be served to us. There's acknowledgement that there's data about us as a subscriber, but we've made and acknowledged a transaction, and we're comfortable with that.
Let's go back to your article and campaign. You mentioned the 3 C's in choosing an agency of the future: consequential, chemistry, and case study. Can you talk a little bit about those and what they mean going forward?
Sure. So in our industry, and speaking about broad marketing services, there's just tremendous upheaval, some of it good, some of it kind of negative if a firm is not able to adapt to the reality on the ground. But we'll start with case study. Most marketers, and in the era we live in of just quarterly driven, very hyper velocity sort of profit and return, are looking for firms with some specificity in either their line of business, in their vertical, and certainly with their product and the channels of which they want to embark. So at iQuanti, for instance, we have a very deep heritage in financial services. Many of our colleagues, our founder, all of us have spent a lot of time with financial services firms. So when we go to a potential partner or client, we have a very deep case study typically in that type of thing. So most firms we see gravitating towards some type of specialization, some type of real deep expertise. So we'll start there. Being consequential is really about being a true business partner, seeing, not just being a channel manager. What does the data story really mean here? Looking at deep business metrics around market share, the total lifetime value of a customer, looking at real deep propensity modeling, the total customer experience. There's plenty of transactional work that's available in the market, but we see, and there's a lot of great thought leadership in the market around this, are firms that really are wed to that client as a partner in that entire customer journey are really the ones that are thriving in kind of this new era. And in the article, the third point I raised is chemistry. Does the team have chemistry? Are they well aligned culturally? Are they a good fit? All those things still really matter. Much of that is born from if you're consequential, and frankly, if you have good case studies. But team chemistry, do the services, do the expertise align, or is there real shared goals and values and objectives? Is the firm able to make the client's business objectives their own? And consequentially, is the client able to share in that sort of success with the agency? So those, in the context of services industry, those are sort of some interesting attributes to look at. And that's what I brought out in the article.
That is interesting. What are some of the future trends or technologies that you see occurring, particularly in the spaces where you work with your clients?
So we look at a few different quadrants. It's sort of the present, and then really helping to prepare them for what's coming. And there's certainly a midterm and then a longer term. We'll start with long term, and personally, I look at things that will change the entire advertising ecosystem, which right now is really based on an old model of impressions and eyeballs. Now, targeting has become more precise. Channels have become more disparate. We're seeing consolidation certainly around the three titans in the industry. Facebook, Google, and now Amazon. But it's really educated guesses that are becoming much more sophisticated and a reach and tonnage and eyeballs. If a technology comes into the equation that begins to have some ubiquity to cut out that middleman, that could be very consequential. And there's some real life examples using some blockchain and some integrated ledger technology where instead of you being pixeled by a brand and then chased around the internet, what if you opted in to a platform and acknowledged that you were you, and the brand then has a one-to-one relationship and acknowledgement of you as a person, not necessarily sort of a probabilistic or a deterministic guess. And in exchange for having messaging sent to you at acceptable intervals, the example I'd have is maybe like the Hulu ad model, where every 20 minutes or so you're interrupted, but it's not super intrusive. The ads are usually within your sort of sphere of interest. But imagine if a microcurrency was deposited in an account that you had, and suddenly we've disrupted that whole ecosystem of massive advertisers. I think that really bears watching. Near term, where we're counseling a lot of clients is this concept of being found. And we have formed this firm really focused on data, which has a bias toward performance channels because that's where you can gather a lot of transactional data. And being found doesn't necessarily have to mean a consumer is going to a web browser on their laptop, typing in a search query on Google. That happens trillions of times. And that's certainly really compelling, but it could be found by someone speaking into their device, speaking into their audio device in the car. Certainly the rise of in-home devices is something we're watching. And if you use good principles of things like SEO and the predictive tools that we've built around that, structure content in such a way that it can meet a user at their point of inquiry, and then utilize technology to the best of your ability, you will be found. You will be found by these devices. We're doing a lot of work in that area right now around where the future of search is going, and that's a big push for our firm.
Excellent. Now for the hardest question.
Yeah.
Are there any books or podcasts that you'd like to recommend?
A great book, back to the article and campaign and how we are trying to adopt and model a firm. There's a gentleman by the name of Michael Farmer who wrote Madison Avenue Manslaughter. And really interesting guy, has I think a Harvard and a Bain background, and has seen sort of the rise and the fall of that generalist advertising marketing model, and has come up with a few really interesting hypotheses that are kind of borne out by data of how to shift and how to really transform and adapt, and addresses everything from the talent gap in a generalist firm all the way through how to model agreements between a marketing firm and a brand that are equitable to both. So that's a really good book. I've recommended that to clients as well as colleagues in the space. And it's kind of a apocalyptic tale of doom, but in the end, everything kind of might turn out okay if we follow Michael's advice. So that's an interesting book.
And that was Madison Avenue Manslaughter by
yeah.
Michael Farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Really
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
My guest today has been Brent Trimble, SVP of Strategy and Solutions at iQuanti. Brent, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great.